I'm so excited for our lunch and learn today. We've got an incredible guest. Annie Meehan is here. We're going to be talking about how to be entrepreneurial in a mentoring relationship. And I know that we all might not necessarily be entrepreneurs ourselves, but we're going to think about entrepreneurship in a different way, and specifically how we can leverage that in our mentoring relationship. I want to give a brief introduction of our speaker today. Her name is Annie Meehan. Annie is awesome. Annie and I actually connected through a previous speaker of ours. Essentially, let me begin with a few questions. Do your word choices have impact on the people around you? Are you an influencer looking to better yourself and your community? Could you use some actionable tools to remove obstacles that get in the way of living your best life? If you answered to yes to any of those questions, then you are in the right spot. Annie Meehan has worked in investment banking for 9 years, owned and operated 2 fitness franchise locations, and grew and led a direct sales team of 250 plus people. Annie is excellent, and Annie is someone who's definitely got a mentality of not only working within a business, but also being an entrepreneur herself. And she's got great insight on how you can not only leverage the ability to be an entrepreneur, but also how you can do that in a mentoring relationship. Annie, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Garrett.
So everybody in our program are in mentoring relationship within their respective company, and they're meeting with other colleagues of theirs for this mentoring relationship. And we're talking about how to be entrepreneurial. And so I guess the first question to start with is, can somebody be entrepreneurial even if they aren't an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I think being entrepreneurial is more about mindset than it is necessarily about your role or the actions you take every day. In fact, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do like Shark Tank. And I always think, I love that show because it invites people to think creatively. Those are business owners, but you can think like that inside a business. And so having that entrepreneurial mindset means being creative, being inventive, looking every day of how can I take what's working and make it better, or how can I take what's not working and create something good. It's about being an entrepreneurial mindset. It's a lot about being a leader, even if you're not in a leadership role, not blaming others, but just owning and thinking, what can I do to improve the process or the procedure of something we are doing in our business?
That's interesting. Could you elaborate a little bit more about that? I think that's a really insightful point. I think sometimes if I'm putting myself in the shoes of people working within a company, you know, I might be thinking to myself like, well, hey, I was hired to do this job or do this thing, and I go in and I do it. It sounds like almost what you're suggesting is potentially a little bit different than that. It's not necessarily following the rules of exactly what was told by you to do, but maybe thinking about it in a different way and maybe trying to identify a more efficient or effective way of accomplishing the things that you need to do. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that, and I would say kind of a small mindset. I hate to pick on people, but I'm not the world's greatest role follower, true. But I also am always like, when I was working for a big corporation, I was thinking, okay, I'm hired to do this, like you're saying, but what else can I do? And because of that, what else is what gave me promotion after promotion, as I was like, okay, this is the bare minimum and I'm going to do that, but what else can I do to expand? So I think about even just simple things like coming in early, staying a few minutes late, not worrying so much about I'm supposed to work 8 to 5, because that will keep you where you are, which is okay if that works for you. But if you do have that entrepreneurial mindset, that growth mindset, really, you're looking for what else can I do? And if I'm done with my work and you're sitting next to me, it's me being that servant-hearted, like, how can I help you, Garrett? What are you working on? Is there anything I can support you? So it's looking around you at other people. It's looking at how you can perform even better than expected. I think an entrepreneurial mindset always looks at everything with a mind of, this is good, how can I make it better? Right? A lot of people are okay with good, and that's fine. It's really hard to own a business with a good mindset. You have to always be thinking, how can I make things better? If we want to climb the corporate ladder, if we want to create our own business, I was doing some writing this morning, and it was about, do we sell our products and services, or do we sell the results? Am I selling a haircut, or am I selling the confidence you feel when you walk out of the salon? And so I think it's always about thinking beyond the minimum to how can you improve and enhance.
I love that perspective, and I think that really makes a lot of sense. And I think that kind of leads nicely into how does that pertain to a mentoring relationship. And I think to kind of provide a little context, I know for our participants in our mentor program, their second meeting is a collaboration meeting. And that collaboration is, especially if we've got 2 mentor participants that are across different departments, there are opportunities to be entrepreneurial within that, because so often we don't really know what other people in other departments do for their work or the obstacles that they face. And so this is an opportunity to collaborate and kind of say, hey, here are the things that, maybe are frustrations, maybe are things that are blocking me from getting what I want. What are your thoughts on this? How can we think about this in a different way? And maybe there's something that somebody else in a different department's working on that maybe they've got control over, that they could potentially change the way that they operate to make my life more efficient or effective. I'd love if you could just maybe elaborate how entrepreneurship, or being entrepreneurial rather, in a mentoring relationship can have a big impact on not only the success and productivity of that relationship, but your happiness with your mentoring relationship and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the healthiest and most successful mentoring relationships are people that recognize we all bring something to the table. I'm not just here, Garrett, I might need help with spreadsheets, or I might need help with visioning, but I also have gifts to give you. And so I think it's really important when people create a mentoring relationship. And I think age is not a factor at all, because we have stuff to learn from people of all different ages, is recognizing that we all bring gifts, and I might have something I really need your help on, but knowing that you also have something. I love strength finders personally. Whenever I'm talking to people about mentoring relationships, I always say, start with strength finders so you can be really clear on what your gifts are, and then also where maybe you're lacking. And having a great mentoring relationships means kind of filling in the cracks for each other, because it should be that mutual teaching. I came to you to learn this, you're teaching me this. And if we're both open, mentoring relationships should always rise above what an initial expectation is. It should always exceed what I'm coming here to learn how to do a spreadsheet. And now all of a sudden I've learned about relationships, I've learned about conflict management, I've learned about visioning. There's so many things. And so, I think that it's really important to know your strengths when you go into a mentoring relationship, but also to learn them together is fine, and to know that it's mutually beneficial. And when someone goes into a mentoring relationship just to take, it actually doesn't serve them, because they're not building trust, and they're not open to maybe learning more than what they thought they needed to. And when you're open, you learn from each other. I've had incredible mentoring relationships throughout my career, and mutual both sides, where I'm teaching, someone else is teaching, back and forth. And I think that that's really a huge key, is learning from each other and knowing your strengths and your weaknesses so you can be open to learning.
That's a really interesting that's a really great insight. And that's very consistent with our horizontal mentorship, essentially research and work on this idea of two people giving to the relationship. Because I think when someone says, like, I'm only here to take, when you say, sorry, I'm only here to take, that's not necessarily on the part of someone who's got less experience. It's also very often on the part of the person who's got more experience. Because by that take, so often what I'll hear is this notion of, like, I'm more than happy to be a mentor, but I'm not actually interested in getting a mentor. Essentially what that communicates is I'm not actually open to the idea of learning from that. And that is actually one of the biggest, I guess, kind of taking actions you can make, is because you are essentially saying to another person, I don't think there's anything you've experienced that I could learn from. And that is not conducive for building a successful mentoring relationship. And so I guess the question I have for you, because this I think is going right down a road that I think is really relevant and impactful, is this concept of, if let's say I'm an executive, if I'm a chief executive officer or a chief financial officer or chief operating officer, or if I'm someone pretty high up in my company, I'm matched with somebody on the hierarchy who's not as high, how can I have the open mind to still be entrepreneurial in this mentoring relationship? How can I have the open mind that I can learn something from this other person and identify synergies?
I like that question. As a speaker, I have the privilege of doing consulting with the staff community a lot, with the CEOs and the CFOs, and partially because they don't always feel like they have someone they can be authentic with and talk to. So I'm a safe person from the outside for them to be vulnerable. And I think one of the hardest things to probably teach someone, but one of the most important, is leave your ego at the door. Because as soon as you think you can't learn from people anymore, it really stops your growth, right? And so successful people, entrepreneurial-minded people, people that are at the top but are successful the most, are people that are always open, always keeping in mind learning. So I always am teaching them. I was working with a CEO recently, and he was just wanting to produce more than his community, his team, his staff was performing for him, but he was telling them, and there was just this negative energy. And I'm like, you have to just shift. So when you come humbly to people, you ask questions. And whether in the back of your head, you're thinking, I already know more than you, I'm farther up than you, what do you have to teach me? When you let that down and come with a humble open mind, you can learn so much. And so I would really just encourage them, like, just shift. Even if you don't feel like it, don't ask them what's working, what's not working. Ask them what you're not seeing. I think sometimes when we get to the top, we're so clear on what we want, we forget to pay attention to the pieces we're not seeing. And so I think really before that mentoring relationship starts, it's being honest and saying, you got to be here to learn, especially if you're facilitating these mentoring relationships. You got to talk to those CEOs and CFOs and say, are you really going to be open to learning as much as teaching? Because you will learn things if you're open, but if you're not, you won't, right? And then it just stops it. And then people feel like you're talking at them, not with them. You're not asking questions. You're not in conversation, which conversation keeps our mind open to learning. As soon as I start telling, you become defensive and it shuts you down from even learning, even if you want to. So I talk a lot about ego. I talk a lot about no matter how high we are or successful or making money, can we still be able to learn? And can we have somebody new with fresh eyes show us something in our business we might not be seeing? So
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think a counterpoint that I hear to this is this feeling, this drive, this feeling of I need to have all the answers. As the chief whatever officer, I need to have all the answers for my team. I need to be that person that can drive this ship. I think, you've heard the term, if no one knows the answers, the person with certainty is the one that people will follow. And I think that makes a lot of sense, but sometimes can potentially be misconstrued in a mentoring relationship for essentially saying you can't have vulnerability. Could you just maybe elaborate a little bit more about that?
I think it's a hard question though, Garrett. I'll be honest with you. And here's why. When I'm working as an outsider with the CEO or CFO, what's happening for them is they don't feel exactly what you're saying. They feel like they need to have all the answers. And they feel if they're vulnerable, if they're authentic with one of their employees that is not at their level, people will see weakness. And people don't like to see weakness, and especially from the top, right? And so that is why people hire consultants outside the company, because they can tell me, oh my gosh, our finances are not where we thought, or I'm thinking about selling. They don't feel safe telling that to their employees. If you have a leader that's comfortable with themselves and comfortable with where their company is, I think it's a really important and powerful conversation you have to have before you start that mentoring relationship, because it can be unsafe, not dangerous, but unsafe to share some of the inside secrets that the top knows about that other people don't know about, because it can lead to fear. And fear leads to reaction, and people can leave companies or start rumors. Even if they're in a confidential relationship, fear brings out something in us. So I think it's first really building up those executive level employees to say, hey, this is a safe relationship. We're going to build it up. These are the topics you're going to talk about. You don't have to open your heart and share everything with them. Maybe you need a coach or consultant outside the company for that. But be open to learning some, be open to sharing some, be open to teaching some, because I do know at that executive level, there is some protection around some of the information they know, whether we feel like it should be or not. To protect a company as a business owner, I know that I had people that I mentored and mentored me, but they didn't necessarily know everything that was going on with the company. When we were getting ready to sell, when we had a client that had an issue, they might know part of it, but we had to have some things that were protected for the safety of our clients and for the protection of our business to get the best price when we were ready to sell. Sometimes as a leader or an owner, you have to pick and choose who you share more information with. Does that make sense?
Makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense. I totally get that. And I think that's really relevant advice, especially for right now when we're dealing with this coronavirus and the aftermath of the coronavirus. A lot of uncertain conversations about what is going to happen next. I think your notion of being vulnerable is critical. And I think also having these mentoring relationships can help provide a different perspective. Even if there's somebody who's not as high as you on the corporate org chart, having that person to chat with, be vulnerable with, and share can really help make your work life so much more effective and impactful. And by the way, this is not just for the executive. This is for anybody within the company. I mean, you're facing the stress because maybe you've got a spouse that's dealing with stressful situations. Maybe you are facing with stressful situations because what you were working on before the coronavirus is now different than what you're working on right now. You're transitioning to all that. And as humans, we inherently don't like change. So let's take this. Let's jump right back to being entrepreneurial in a mentoring relationship. Are there some tactics? Are there some things that we can start and try to implement to help us initiate these types of conversations, initiate these types of outcomes. Essentially, collaborative, effective, and productive, I guess, efficiencies that may not have existed prior to the mentoring relationships. Are there some things that we can start doing or talking about?
Yeah, I mean, two things that come to mind right away is that for me, whenever I'm working with someone, I want to get to the end before we start. So I want to know, what is your ultimate vision of where we're going, of how I can serve you, of what your life looks like when we're done mentoring, of what is your true vision? So I have people like create, write out, write. This is where I'm at. This is what it's going to feel like. I'm going to go home and relax. I'm not going to go home and fight with my spouse about stress, or the company's not going to be chasing this number, or we're going to have this many employees, or we're going to let this many employees go. So I think having that vision, I always like to start with that. And then I think excellent mentors ask excellent questions, so what will it take to get to that vision? When do you see that vision being, when do you see yourself achieving that? Is that a year from now? Is that 5 years from now? Is it 3 months from now? Getting clear on setting those goals with people, asking the right questions, being clear on where you're going and how we can help each other get to where it is, or what this is. Some people's mentoring relationship is solely professional. Like, we don't talk about spouse and kids and whatever. A lot of people's mentoring relationships are both personal and professional, right? I'm here to support you, encourage you, ask questions. One thing I talk about with having an accountability partner or a mentor or a coach is they got to believe in you on your good and bad days. Nobody needs someone else to beat them up. So I think that's kind of an important question right off the bat. Like, hey, you said you wanted to eat 3 apples a day and you're still only eating 1, it's 2 months in. How do you want me to help you redirect, right? So maybe there's a mentoring situation that someone wants to change. I'm looking for that promotion, but they're not. What are you going to do to get it? I'm going to get continuing education. I'm going to show up early. I'm going to get to know that department, whatever it is. If they're not doing the things they said they were going to do, those actionable steps to achieve that goal, how do you want to be held accountable? I think it's really important to get clear in the beginning. And some people are like, no, I want you to be hard on me. I need that support and direction. And other people are like, I just need you to listen. I don't want you to give me, I think you can give me a little feedback, but I need a place where I can vent safely. I find a lot of people, especially the more responsibility they have in the corporate world, the more they need someone that they can safely just unload on. Just say, I'm super stressed out at work. I'm super stressed out at home. I don't know if our restaurant's going to be around after COVID. I don't know how, I'm laying off 1/3 of my employees. I think all those things, you need someone safe to support you through those challenges, which everything in life will have challenges, but especially leadership roles and being an entrepreneur, owning your own business. So having a safe place to support each other on that journey.
I think that's a really good idea. I think what I'll hear as not necessarily as a rebuff, but sometimes what I'll hear is like an objection to that from some people is I don't actually know what I want to be or where I want to go in 5 years. And sometimes that can be difficult to think about because it's easy to get kind of caught up with the day-to-day routine of what you normally do and just kind of like saying, hey, I want to be flexible to go with the flow. And I think what you're saying, and I think to kind of like counter to that objection is this can change. Where you want to be in 5 years is not a commitment now that you're going to absolutely have to be there, but it's setting your sights on something that you may end up wanting to achieve. Because the objection to goal setting of like not setting a goal to be flexible with whatever could happen is not necessarily a great objection, because it's going to mean that you're not going to be able to track whether or not you're on pace to getting to where you want to go. I think being comfortable with this idea of, I don't want to say failure, but not sticking to the 5-year goal you set initially is okay, as long as you keep updating it. And so for any person who's objecting to this, I don't know if I want to identify where I want to be in 5 years, because that could change. I mean, we're in such certain times right now. I think that is okay, but to at least get started, to set an intention of where you want to be is so critical, because that's so great. And I think even on top of that, to transition even subjects even more, I'm thinking about some of the mentor relationships we've facilitated, and some of the innovations that have came out of these relationships were because of the relationship. It's like individually, they could have set their own 5-year goals and stuff, and they may not have come up with these ideas, but by coming together and saying, well, this is what I'm facing. I'm facing this thing too. what if we were to do this? I know that two women we ended up pairing together ended up creating a women's empowerment group, which was really cool. It didn't exist at the company beforehand. And so I thought that was really awesome. And I don't know, how does that all play into this entrepreneurial mentorship?
Yeah, I love that. I love innovative, great, new creative things. And I think collaboration works so much better than competition. So I'm all about collaboration. Well, something you were saying is obviously, I mean, a lot of people, and especially right now, people feel very uncertain about the future. And so if I'm asking them, where do you see yourself in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years? When many people are like, I don't know. I honestly don't know, Annie. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know for sure what I want to do. One thing I like to do with people is help them create a list. Like, tell me about 3 to 5 things that you love about your life right now that are working super well for you, that bring you joy, that you go home feeling accomplished, successful, proud of. Whether it's, again, I'm always personal, I'm professional. I think overlap, and I think when we're happy at home, we're happy at work. When we're happy at work, we're happy at home. And when one is off, both are off. So I ask them, what's working in your life that really you love? Then I ask them, what is stressing you out in your life? Let's make a list of where are you super unhappy, unsatisfied, what's not working. And then what are you willing to do? Like trying to pick only 1 or 2 things. What is the most dissatisfying and what are you willing to do to change it? Or are we letting it go? And then what are some action steps where we can move and have less dissatisfying parts to our life and more satisfying? And then what would that look like? And sometimes people getting through those questions can help them say, you know what, here's one thing. I know in a year I want to move to Florida, or I know that I really want a managerial position, or I know that I want to start a business on the side and stay in the corporation, or I know that I want to empower more women to have a voice and be strong. So let's collaborate and do that. I mean, great ideas come out of great questions and conversations and brainstorming. How do we make this better? Where are we not being heard or feeling satisfied in our life? So always about questions. For me, it always goes back to questions.
That's awesome. I'm with you on that. I think questions are so critical. I want to talk about permission. And when I say permission, I mean, is it okay for me to try new things that might not be within, let's say, the initial job description that I had initially got hired on for, but to try new things to potentially see if they can make my job more efficient or effective? Is it okay to give that a shot to see if it works? What are your thoughts on that? Absolutely.
Try it all. That's my thoughts. I was talking to a business owner last night, and he bought a business in September, and we were talking about it's a delivery company kind of, but it's a big one. And so he was saying all these people have just been doing their job. Like they're told, pick a package, put it in a truck, and he goes, and things were backing up. And I was like, what are you doing? And I said, you have to have a level of common sense to think about, like, this is what I'm told to do, but is it working most efficiently? So I'm like, try everything. Try something new. Try a new department. Try a new way of doing something. It's always been done that way. And maybe it won't work. But like you said, there's nothing like failure isn't failure. It's like lesson learned. And, oh, maybe that didn't work, but maybe through doing it a way that didn't work, I learned another way that I hadn't thought of that could work. So I'm all about try things new, try doing the same thing in a different way, try different departments, try different jobs. I kind of jokingly say, I love to interview. I interview all the time. I mean, every time I speak, I'm interviewing for the next job. But interviewing teaches you a lot. And people get nervous about interviewing because they're giving their power away, hoping they get that job. But if you keep the power, hoping that you want the job if you get it offered, it changes your mindset. And so I love trying different departments when you're in a big corporation and thinking what other department would interest me. I love looking at like lots of different jobs and thinking, could I do that position? But I really love inside of a company, that's part of that entrepreneurial mindset, is saying, how can we do this better or even different? Or what could make it more enjoyable or faster or more effective or efficient? And so always try new things. And that's part of an entrepreneurial mindset, is always open to what if. So when I meet an entrepreneur, I never say, what do you do? I say, how many things do you do? Because many of them have one job that pays the bills, one job that they love, one job that's in between. You know, they have different things and they're shifting because they're still discovering. They're open to what else.
I love that. And that doesn't necessarily have to be for entrepreneurs. That could be anybody. Like, let's say you're in an accounting role. Like, how many things do you do? I think that's a great reframe of the term, what do you do? Because I think that really can help build that bond, because ultimately, how many things do you do to, let's say, an accountant could be multiple things. It's like, I prepare the taxes, I prepare audits, I do, all these different things that help the company grow. And maybe to the untrained eye or to a person in a different department, they've got no idea of the things that that you do and all the things that you help do to make that business run. So I think that makes a lot of sense. This makes me think of a similar question on this topic. I think so often we think of entrepreneurship as this idea of looking at the things that frustrate us and then being able to try to make changes from there. But the thing about frustration is that it's all based on perspective. It's only frustrating to us if we had a scenario or if we knew about a scenario where that situation was less frustrating. And I guess to maybe think about it in a different light, in a different way, how can we go about ensuring that we are constantly staying up to date on the most efficient and effective ways to do things? I think so often we're working at our job and we think, our job description is to do X, Y, Z task. And it's not necessarily to do research on what other people in this role are doing innovatively or efficiently or effectively. How do you challenge that notion? How can you go about staying on top of the new and innovative things in a specific role or for a specific task?
Yeah, I want to go back to the career thing quick, because I think when we give people our job title, they don't always understand it. But when we tell people the pieces of what we do and why we do it, it's a clearer conversation. It's much better. This question is challenging. And part of me, and I don't want to be closed-minded, part of me thinks people are born with it and people are not. And I don't think that doesn't mean you can't learn it, but some people are very comfortable with status quo. I'm going to go in the job and do X, Y, and Z. But I think when you do have that entrepreneurial mind, it broadens you. It always says X, Y, and Z is working, but what about LMN? And what could I do before? And what could I do after? And I don't think it can't not be trained to someone if they have the desire. But I think some of us have a natural instinct to look at things and wonder. And some of us have a natural instinct to look at things and accept. This is just the way it is. That's what I'm going to do. So I think you have to have the desire. But if you have the desire to look beyond what you're required to do, I think that is when you start to expand and see, how else could I do this better? How does someone else do it? And you have to care about your job. Some people go to their job, they punch the clock, they do their work, and they leave. So if you want to be mentored and you want to grow, then again, I keep feeling like I keep going back to questions, but you have to ask questions. Especially if someone's a mentor that used to be in a position similar to yours, how did you do it? What were the parts that made, how did you make it work better? How did you enjoy it when it became mundane? How did you stay satisfied? How did you make the customer happy? Asking those questions to look beyond. And maybe it's not black and white, but a lot of people, they either have that and you just see it in them, like they just want to make it better, like good's not good enough. How can I make this better always? How can I make it great? And other people are like, it's good enough. I'm not going to get paid more if I work harder or think more innovatively. So I think in the mentoring relationship, another great question right away is like, do you want to be? Usually if people have a mentoring relationship, they have a desire to be better, to be more effective, to enjoy their work more. So I don't know if that answers your question, but to me, I think it's like almost some people just have it within them and other people are like, yeah, it's good enough. I get paid the same whether I go beyond and above and then whether I just do the basic job. I'm just not a person that's naturally satisfied unless I know I'm giving my best, doing my best. Like my speaker friends, I run a mastermind out of my home for professional speakers. And once they were here and they were like, Annie, 90%'s an A, right? And I'm like, not to me. I want 150% every time. I'm going to do stuff before, I'm going to do stuff during, and I'm going to do stuff after that I don't have to do, but I want to do that. And that's what I think is that people that really want a great mentorship are going to say, what else can I do? What's your vision? Let me tell you about what I do in the day. Can I ask you a question? How could I do it better? Or how could I do this? For me, I've always wanted to be my best and learn and grow. So that's why I was always going after promotions at Piper. I was always like, what else could I do? What else could I learn? Who else could I serve? What is syndicate? What does it mean to bring a private company public? Who can I learn from? And surrounding myself with people that knew more than I did so that I always could be learning and growing. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like raising your standard of excellence. Like when someone says like, oh, I worked my tail off for this company, work your tail off is subjective based on what you think working your tail off is. And, or I've done everything you've asked me to do. And very well, you may have. But that is subjective based on essentially what someone essentially considers their standard of excellence. And so I think one thing that I really try to focus on is this idea of constant curiosity. And that can make work so much easier. It can be so much easier to get in flow when you feel like you've got control over the things that you're doing. And so even if you're told that you need to get this task done, like this, I think what I want to be very clear is that what Annie and I are suggesting when we're saying be entrepreneurial in a mentor relationship, we're not saying like, hey, you got to do A, B, and C tasks. Instead, go do X, Y, and Z tasks. We're not saying that. You still need to get A, B, and C tasks done. But can you think about it in a different way? Is it worth it to continue doing A, B, and C tasks, but take a little time to see if there's some extra research, some insights, some knowledge that you could leverage to make A, B, and C tasks more efficient? And maybe that could free up your time to work on other tasks that you really enjoy or that you think are going to make a big impact on the business. And I mean, shoot, you think about things like Google's 20% time. And essentially Google's 20% time, Google, for many of its employees, has 20% of their full-time salary paid time working on anything they want to do. And I'm not suggesting that every company do this or any company do this, but what I think is fascinating about this is that you're getting paid the same to do this, but you're getting incentivized to go out and do something that's maybe a little bit different. And I think in our mentoring relationship, we can think about it in a different way. We can leverage this time with our mentor to think, okay, I have been doing this task like this way up to this point, but is there a more efficient way of doing it? As opposed to checking off the box that, this has got to be the most efficient way to do it because it's the way I've been doing it for the last 5 years. You are closing yourself off from the potential opportunities to make business easier, more efficient, more effective for you, and potentially open up your door for potentially more exciting tasks or tasks that excite you on a more regular basis, that make work more enjoyable, more exciting, and just more energizing to you. Because you had control over it and you were able to make that innovation happen. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that, Annie?
Well, I'm a big believer in the power of words, what we say, and it helps us how we show up. So my 3 words since the middle of March have been be innovative, be creative, and be generous. And I think that if people show up wherever they show up every day or most days, and they're innovative, they're creative, and they're generous, they're going to bring their best, right? And that is about doing those basics that need to get done and then expanding. And I think this is an interesting time because so many people are working from home, and I'm hearing more and more companies are emailing saying, how's that working for you? Do you want to stay at home? Do you want to come back to the office? Are you able to be productive? And many people are saying, oh my gosh, I'm so much more relaxed at home. I'm on the computer by 6:45 because I'm not doing drive time. I'm able to get more done more effectively. I can tune everything out. I figured it out. It was weird at first, especially people that had young kids, but now they have this rhythm. And it's not for everybody, but allowing people to work in their best environment. Like you're talking about Google, and I think about some people need a quiet office with the door shut. Some people are like, I want to be in open air. Some people want headphones on. Allowing us to perform, to know ourselves. That's why, again, I love Strength Finders. Know who you are first and how you perform, but then go beyond that and then show that, like, you're more productive in this sort of an environment or whatever. And I think that's about keeping an open mind to doing your task, but also like, where do I perform best? Oh, I need to sit outside on the deck. I can really focus there. Or I need to be in the corner of the office, or I need to go into an office. Asking yourself those questions. How do I perform best? Do I need music on or music off, or all those different little things that can bring out absolutely our best? And I love that, asking myself every day, how can I be creative, innovative, and generous today? What can I give to someone? How can I serve someone? How can I take something that's good and make it better? And how can I create something new? And I think whether that's relationships or performance or tasks, looking at everything with that mindset can just help your mentor relationship. And even asking a mentor relationship, what are the words you hope to identify our relationship as? What will it look like? Will it be creative? Will it be accountability? Will it be support? Will it be taskmaster? Whatever it is, having words or having a clear definition going in what you're hoping to get out. And like, it changes, like you said, sometimes you're like, I want this, this, and this, but then you get to know each other and you learn different and new and even more if you're open. So
that's awesome. Well, Annie, this has been excellent. I think this was a really insightful and valuable lunch and learn. How can our audience find more about you and connect with you?
Absolutely. I love to connect. I do a choose letter twice a month because nobody needs more news. So how about a choose letter? Because life is about choices. My website's just Annie Meehan, ANNIE Meehan.com. I have over 200 videos on YouTube, 5 books and 3 workbooks, and I love to inspire and encourage people. So just Googling my name and seeing how I can encourage you or help support you in whatever you do.
That's awesome. Thanks, Annie, for being here.
Thank you.